Good morning, everybody. This is Shelby Forsythia with another Wednesday live video. If you saw my preview on Instagram, you know that today we're going to be talking about grief around the holiday season. Thanksgiving is in a little over a week, just over a week, and this time of year is difficult and triggering and just generally heavy for a lot of people. So this is kind of a classic topic that gets thrown around grief circles this time of year, but it's because the holidays are so weighted and they are so heavy for people. So in my own story, this time of year is heavy for me because there always seem to be a lot of bad news that came out of between about the space and time between October 1st and New Year's. There was always someone getting surgery, someone having a major life change, someone needed to go through a treatment, and then of course if you've read my personal story over on my website, which is shelbyforsythia.com, you know that my mom died the day after Christmas in 2013. So that holiday in itself is kind of tinged with some grief as a result. So the holidays are a hard time for me, to say the least. Even doing energy work and work in grief recovery, I still get these twinges of nostalgia or sadness or just like a longing, like a heartachy feeling, and I miss the way things used to be, like before bad news even existed in my realm of consciousness, before I even knew what cancer was. And Christmas was my mom's favorite holiday, so as much as I carry forward her excitement for all the decorations and the music and the traditions and stuff, I have moments where I will tear up at Christmas displays, or when certain songs play, or when things are just so beautiful, and I wish she could be there with me to experience them and see them the way that she used to. So this is simultaneously a very, very light season for me and a very, very heavy season for me. So there's these two forces that are kind of competing with each other. And all of these emotions together are a classic definition of grief. So grief isn't just a reaction to death or loss that fades with time, but grief is this collection of emotions that is in response to a loss, but kind of swirls around in our brains, and there's no real time frame for it, and we can continue to experience it long after the actual grief or loss event has happened. So the holidays are a period of grief, and that grief has been different for me every year after my mom's death. I won't say that it's gotten better, because especially in grief recovery and even just through my own life experience, I don't believe that time heals all. So people that tell you that are just trying to make you feel better. It's not true. I think it's really important to use time to our advantage when we're recovering from grief, but we can't ever really make things better per se. We just make them a different experience for us. So I won't tell you that time has made my grief easier. It has just made it different to look at, and that changes every year. So being a grief guide and reading as much as I have on the subject and experiencing as much as I have in my life, I've noticed three ways that kind of keep recurring, and three ways that I've actually incorporated into my own life that can make the holidays a little bit more meaningful, or a little less painful, depending on how you use them. So the first one that I tell people and have used myself is to tell meaningful stories, and then retell them. So this gets out some of this mind swirling that happens up here, and really can foster connection with other people. So even starting with a sentence with "remember the time when" or "remember how they used to," is wonderful for opening the door to being seen and heard by the people that you're surrounded by. You can do this with total strangers, so you can be like, "Oh, you remember one of my mom's Christmas traditions was blah, blah, blah," and they can respond with, one of their loved ones. Or you can do this with people that you actually know, that you're spending time with. around the holidays. And a lot of times too, this is really cool because it asks other people to also be vulnerable and share their stories, which can be equally, if not more, healing as well. I'll tell people all the time that I learn a lot more about my mom now that she's died, as opposed to when she was alive, and that's just because of the continued stories that I get to hear about her. Um, the second tip that I've used in my own life and that I tell other people is to start new traditions or to alter old ones. So sometimes sticking to like the norm or the usual is really, really painful, and can make somebody's absence even more pronounced. So if you do everything exactly the same as you did last year, there's a lot more obvious of a space that's not being filled. So being willing to start new traditions or to modify old ones so they account for the person who's no longer there or account for the major life change that's happened, is really important, especially to the people who are grieving. So this could be as simple as lighting a memorial candle for the course of a month, or over the week of a holiday, or whenever the significant time period occurs for you. You could hang a new ornament on your Christmas tree if you celebrate Christmas, or if they have like a favorite song or a favorite hymn or something, you could sing that at Thanksgiving or Christmas, or kind of whenever other holidays will pop up for you, or even if you have like a special tradition on New Year's. All these are kind of stacked back to back, so you can literally put this in anytime. I know that in my family, my dad, my sister, and I all came to the agreement, not even really together, but kind of on our own, and then we came together with it, that the house where we spent all of our Christmases and where my mom did die was really heavy and really sad and almost too obviously different to continue to spend Christmas there. So in honor of my mom, we take a trip every year to a new place. So the first year after she died, we went to the Redwoods in California, and that's actually a place that she wanted to go before she died, so we kind of did it in her honor. And the year after that, my sister and I both got the opportunity to gamble for the first time at a casino, which is kind of on both of our bucket lists, and that was in Cherokee, North Carolina. And this year we'll actually be going on a cruise, which is something the three of us have never experienced, especially together. So each year we try to select something that will create more good memories in our lives, and enable us to relive good memories of being around my mom, but also kind of prevents us from sitting at home and ruminating on the fact that my mom is no longer there and her spirit is not with us as strongly as it used to be, at least in person. But we keep my mom around in other ways and other traditions. Like we still will smuggle all of our stockings into our suitcases before we leave for the trip, so we have like a proper Christmas morning no matter where we are, continuing to open gifts and things like that. And then the third tip that I give people for grief around the holidays is to remember that you don't have to anything. So this is a biggie that I tell my clients a lot, even when it's not a holiday season, because especially this time of year, there's a lot of pressure to maintain a role or a schedule or a ritual. And remember that you don't have to participate in anything that doesn't resonate with you. So this is my permission slip for you to not participate in holidays the same way that you used to, because you're not the same person that you were. So you don't have to always decorate your lawn. You don't have to go to that religious function that people are counting on you to be there. You don't have to host the open house. Grief has the ability to make us feel powerless. And just saying that you don't have to anything kind of gives you a little bit of your power back. And grief has the ability to change our consciousness in ways, and that we really recognize what we're choosing to do with our lives because we have now seen and experienced death. So remember around the holidays in particular, and all times of year, that you don't have to anything, because you're not the same person that you were. And that is 100% expected and normal and okay. And then in response to these three tips, if you're not personally grieving this holiday, there are three kind of alternate ways to support somebody who is grieving this time of year, because we all know, if we haven't personally lost somebody this year or recently, we know somebody who has. So the first thing in response to telling meaningful stories is to be somebody who listens, and to let people who are grieving know how much you enjoy hearing them, and or offer meaningful stories of your own, whether or not that's about somebody else in your life that you are grieving, or if it's about the same person that they're telling a story about. Honesty and vulnerability this time of year, instead of like the fake smiles and kind of TV holidays, are really, really meaningful, especially um, to somebody who is grieving. The second one is to be willing to participate in or even help create or manifest the new traditions that people want to create. Forcing somebody or expecting somebody to stick to old traditions like nothing's changed is often really painful or really difficult for somebody who's grieving. So this is a place where empathy really comes in. Um, be willing to try something new or to alter your current traditions to adapt to this really major life change in a griever's life. So the best thing that you can ask a griever is, what would you like to do, or how would you like to go about this? And then just be willing to hear their response and work with them to create a new space or a different space than what you had before. And then lastly, in response to you don't have to anything, expect grieving people to change. Grief makes us different people. It makes us want different things from our lives, and it makes us view life differently than we used to. So instead of saying you're still cooking the turkey, right? Just ask, do you still want to do the turkey this year? And that just opens the door a little bit to give them the power to choose what to participate in and what not to participate in this year, or to offer suggestions for something that they'd like to do differently. So this is a really cool way of checking in with people and kind of getting a gauge for how they want to respond to the holidays taking place, because the holidays come no matter what. We can't really stop time or stop a calendar year or ignore the fact that like there's Christmas decorations and the Hanukkah decorations and Thanksgiving decorations up everywhere. And I want to point out here that you don't have to treat people like really gently. Like, grievers aren't fragile. They're just different than they were, and that will require you to be a little bit different as well. Um, so that's everything that I have for you this week. I'm sure on some level that we've all been affected by grief during the holidays. So in the comment section, which is below this, I want to know how grief has affected you or affected your experience of the holidays. And then if you have any tips or tricks or traditions that you want to share with everybody, I'd love to hear what those are. I always love collecting new ideas for what people do with grief or loss this time of year, and how they honor people who are no longer around to physically celebrate with them. So comment below. And then I also know that the election results are going to be a point of table talk this year, both Thanksgiving, Christmas, Hanukkah, New Year's, anytime you're getting together with family, summer solstice, winter solstice. um, if you celebrate any or all of those things, you're going to be getting together with family this time of year. So if you're anxious or panicked or kind of unsure of how to sit with all these differing opinions and be surrounded possibly by arguing, but just with a lot of emotions in general, I've created an online course called How to Be Present with Others' Pain that is the secret to not only how I'm able to sit with others' grief, but how I'm able to sit with all these conflicting emotions that come up and are defined as grief without letting them wash over me or kind of just take over my state of mind. It's helpful for listening to grief stories around the holidays. It's helpful for listening to election talk around the holidays. It's kind of just helpful everywhere. I use it a lot of times, even when I'm just out in public and listening to a news story or a podcast, or even just two people talking to each other on the train. It's something that comes into play a lot more spaces than you recognize, but once you have the tool, you will use it everywhere. So if you click over to shelbyforsythia.com, it's available there under a little tab called Online Courses, and it is just $37, which is amazingly spectacular because it is something that you will use for the rest of your life. And lastly, if you're not signed up to receive my weekly newsletter, which includes this video, and other articles I've written, thoughts about current events and upcoming live events as well, you can head over, same website, to shelbyforsythia.com, and there's a little form on the front of the site. It will not be a pop-up because those are annoying, but it's a little form that will just ask you to fill in your name and your email address, and you will get a email every Wednesday that is an update on everything that's kind of going on, and some reminders and just some notes about grief and life and our interaction with both, because it is inevitable for all of us that we will experience some form of loss in this world. So if you'd like to receive the weekly newsletter, that's where you can find that. Thank you, as always, for sharing space to me. I can't wait to hear from you about your holiday, how you're spending it, how the people you are spending it with are reacting and experiencing it with you. And then if you have any cool stories or traditions to share, I'm 100% open and ready to hear those from you. I love you. I see you, and I am proud of you and the work that you are doing in the world today. Thanks so much for sharing space with me, as always.